You're listening to Triple Z. My name's Ag. This is Liminal Space, and I'm interviewing Bo from Bowie about his new EP called Oblivious. It's a down-tempo electronica little EP, sort of about the queer experience. Would you like to introduce yourself, Bo?
Yeah, hi, I'm Bo, also known as Bowie. Not just the band name, but that's also my nickname as well, so works out well. But yeah, I'm here to talk about my upcoming EP coming out on the 18th of February called Oblivious.
Very exciting. Thank you for being on the show with me. This is my first ever interview, so I got the nervous, but you've been very patient with me, so I appreciate that.
Well, I'm glad that I get to be the first ever Liminal Space interview. So it's going to go down history, you know.
I don't know if it's very exciting, but
we'll go down in our history as something exciting.
Yeah, the beginning of our friendship, I guess.
Yeah, it was interesting that we had a few random acquaintances that all knew each other, and I was like, oh, hey, this is cool.
Yeah,
let's do that.
That's very much Brisbane, isn't it? Everyone knows each other. There's only a couple degrees of separation.
Yeah, it's a small little place, especially around with the music stuff. Everyone always knows everyone somehow.
Yeah, that's
it's
very
weird,
true.
But it's amazing.
Yes, about the EP. We were kind of chatting about it the other day. And you were just saying that you're pretty inspired by Daft Punk, who I really don't know that much about apart from the cool anime clips and their big hits.
Well, they've got a few little hits to choose from, but I'm always happy to talk about it.
Yeah.
Daft Punk.
Well, I don't really know what my segue with that was. I think I was just talking about how it was inspired by Daft Punk, maybe, but
yeah,
I don't know.
Well, I can definitely talk about that. The big inspiration is that with my music that I do, most of the time I use a vocoder, which is that auto-tuning robot voice thing. That's pretty cool to use, and I got that just straight from their stuff, pretty much.
That is definitely what I think of when I think of Daft Punk.
Yeah, it's the robot men, and it's lots of fun playing with vocoders because you can do so much more with a keyboard and guitar than you sing into a mic, and your words and syllables and articulation shapes the sound of the instrument you're playing with, and you can do some really cool stuff.
You were specifically talking about the second track on your EP called Heterospect, which you sampled some old interviews with an anonymous gay man from the 60s. Yeah,
so originally I was just searching through back catalogs on YouTube and other basically really trying to find really old interviews or documentary kind of things about just any sort of interviews with queer people just talking about their experience. And suddenly this one popped up, and it was from the 1960s, and it's an interview of a gay man in I think it's the UK. It's either UK or America, but basically he was just detailing that for him it wasn't just about oh, I'm coming out. It's in that time and in his workplace, he could not be out. So he was just living between worlds. And it was about him talking about the idea of being gay and open for him and for some people isn't just a choice of, oh, will people be accepting? It's a choice between which lifestyle do I live? The one that I grew up in, the heterosexual world, and that the world kind of wants at this time, or do I just throw some of that to the wind? Thankfully, people don't have to make that decision now of, do I live this half-false life for the sake of a career and family? Thankfully, you can be gay and have a family life and a job. But it was just a lot of little things that he was saying. I was just oh, that's crazy. I never thought of it as kind of heterospective, which is where the song name comes from. Heterospect. It was a retrospective on like the heterosexual lifestyle as this person was moving between the worlds. And I was like, this is such a cool thing. So I just grabbed a bunch of like the clips from him talking about it and from the interviewer, sliced them together, mixed up some of the beats, and I completely rewrote what he was saying in the last part of the song to kind of like reflect my own journey. And that was pretty cool and fun doing that.
Yeah, that's really cool and super beautiful and also like quite profound. Especially, to be able to listen back to that sort of interview now, and then I guess it can be really hard to feel grateful for how far society has come when there's like, these like religious discrimination bills and stuff trying to be passed at the moment. But things are a lot better. But I do personally relate to him saying that like he has his heterosexual life like like at work and with his family, and then like his personal life is him being his authentic self, because I feel like I had to do that when I had this really crappy job, and it was during the plebiscite when they were trying to legalize gay marriage, and like I worked for like this little family business, and like my boss and his wife and his sister and all three of his kids worked there, and they'd all just like sit in like the back of the workshop and then just talk about how much they hate gay people while staring directly at me.
Oh wow.
And then they wondered why I just like quit on the spot and never went back. But I guess I did try to hide it really hard, but I don't think I'm not very good at it. They clocked me. I didn't even ever have to say anything to them.
Yeah, that whole thing of like people sometimes just, unless you don't look specifically like what they think a queer or gay person looks like, sometimes they'll just spout all this stuff and you're like, oh wow, okay. Those are your thoughts. Yeah,
definitely.
Quite often I might address very, I guess, heteronormative, not queer. And then just randomly I'll be rocking up to work one day and I'm in like a pinafore, I've got my nails done and stuff. And like a few looks from some of the regular customers, they'll be like, oh, you're Bo. And then they don't know how to react at first. And they're usually like, oh no, all good, still the same. It's just this pinafore is pretty damn fine, so I got to wear it today.
Yeah. Well, gender and sexuality and stuff is also fluid, and not just for like LGBT plus people. Like, you can be heterosexual and have a little bit of fluidity with your gender. What's so wrong with like being like a cis-het man and painting your nails and wearing a little earring or something, or like being a woman and like wearing a men's suit or something? It's not as deep and crazy as I feel like heterosexual people seem to think.
Yeah, it still just has like all the like baggage from way back when of people always try and like make sense of what they're seeing, and they haven't encountered someone dressed a certain way before, their head will just jump back to what they've seen or heard before, and that might be what the program part of their mind thinks to try and make sense of it. When really it's like, nope, you don't need to make sense of it. It's just they are what they are. Just continue. Yeah,
literally. Like I read an article the other day about the first trans woman to undergo surgery, and there was like, it never happened before, and I guess everyone was like, oh, okay. And there was like a newspaper article like congratulating her on her transition and her surgeries, because no one had known about it before, and they were like, oh, I guess we got no reason to hate this. But then I guess, I don't know, whatever happened now, it's like,
what decade did that take place? That's a pretty cool story. Initial reaction was just, oh, that happened. That's actually kind of cool.
So it was Christine Jorgensen. She was born in 1926 and died in 1989. She was the first widely known person in the United States for having gender affirming surgery. But I don't know what date that was.
But either way, that's cool that's the initial reaction when people first heard it, before it had time for any sort of prejudice and politics to jump in on it, try and decipher something that didn't need to be deciphered or interpreted in different ways. It was just, is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. It's just her living her best life. But yeah, kind of early, it says that she started her surgeries in 1952.
Okay. That's interesting. I might look into that more later.
Wow.
But yeah, I guess bringing back to the original thing, the main like queer kind of song on the EP is definitely heterospect. It's pretty explicitly queer, which I love.
Did you find it kind of like cathartic to make?
Yeah, it was in a way, because at the end of the interview bit, which this was the one bit which I kept completely intact because I didn't want to change anything about what this guy was saying or how he performed it. But at the very end, the interview was just basically like, oh, so what made you make this kind of change or come to these decisions? And he just answers, oh, well, I just met someone who was reasonable, fine, ordinary, and normal, and it was clear. I was like, oh, yep, that makes sense. How did you come to terms with all this stuff that had all this baggage and decisions behind it? It was just, I just met someone, and there was no other decision, no other path that could be taken. This is how I came to terms with it, because it was just so right that it couldn't be wrong.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and that line, it's right at the very end, kept it intact, because, so perfect. There is actually one cool thing from the EP. So a lot of the other songs are mostly just little random instrumental pieces which I've worked on for the last year or half, just here and now. Some of them are just like the end result to me, just one day being, I'm just going to play around with some samples and some music, see what I can make. And all through that period of over that time was me basically, my queerification, I guess you could say, me like becoming more open and displaying more like queer features about myself. And so that's why I was like, oh, this whole kind of EP does get kind of summed up with that heterospect song. It is like, over the course of me making the EP, it's kind of like I'm now able to look back from when the first song was worked on and be like, oh, I have actually changed. I've made decisions, I've stuck by them, and it's actually worked out pretty well. And one of the songs in particular, A Mountain That Owes Us Nothing, its name actually comes from a Bob Ross scripts generator, which I just threw some words into, and it wrote me this whole Bob Ross script, which is that painter guy with the big afro hair.
Yeah.
If you've seen him, he would always say stuff like, oh, happy little trees and stuff like that. And just a random line it generated was, oh, just draw right now a mountain that owes us nothing. I just like that concept of like Earth living and existing, and it doesn't owe us anything. We're living with and around it. I was like, oh, let's call this very chill track after that.
Yeah, that's so beautiful.
So I can recommend the Bob Ross generator. It's just fun.
That's good for the listeners to know. Bob Ross generator. I guess I wanted to ask you about the album artwork as well, the EP artwork. Did you do that?
Oh yeah, so I kind of forgot that there is a little bit of a story around that. So the picture was of one of my friends. They had taken, it was on this old block of land that was right next to, well, not next to, but near where my parents lived. It was further up the hill, blank block of land. They were about to work on it, and I would sometimes drive my car onto it, cool view, and sit there, drink frozen Cokes from Macca's or whatever, and it's just a really nice view. And I was just like, oh, hey, just take this picture of me sitting on top of my car in this cool way. I just like the lighting at the time and everything. But I took the picture and I found it a few years ago. and I've had some slight criticisms of myself being sometimes I can be a bit oblivious to certain things.
Me
so
too.
I thought it would actually be kind of funny then to title it Oblivious, because in my perspective I was never oblivious, but just rather I would focus more intently on other things that may not be as valued by others. Like, I can sit down and just work on music for like 4 or 5 hours straight and then go, oh, I'm kind of hungry now. Oh, why has the sun gone down? And just get zapped from reality for that time. And sticking with that oblivious theme, I've actually hidden 6 random messages on that EP cover as well.
Oh yeah,
Just in
I
the
can see
background.
2.
Yeah,
3,
I
I can see
actually
3. 4.
put in the side mirror something that says objects may appear queerer than what they are, or something like that. I thought that's funny.
That is funny, I can see that.
Oh, it's called Oblivious, about me being oblivious, but then how many people would spend the time just looking intently at a random picture and find random little words and stuff, because I put it through some random art filter kind of thing on some random app on my phone, which made these cool gradients in this paint kind of style. And then I realized I could kind of blend words into that really nicely. So I just did that for a few random things, just talking about little concepts or ideas about myself over the last 2 years or so. Yeah. Song for Her was a cool kind of one. That has a little bit of a cool story. The most recent ones which I actually made were the first 2 songs, Song for Her and Big Business. And Song for Her was actually inspired by my lovely girlfriend at the moment, Nikki. I love the music she listens to, and I kind of was inspired by that. And I was like, oh, okay, let's try and make some music like that. And when I was trying to think of a name, it was instrumental, so I didn't have a lyric I could call it. So I was like, oh, let's call it Song for Her, because it was just inspired by her music that she listened to. I was like, heck yeah, let's do that. For Big Business, the first kind of song there, it was just me playing around with some samples, and yeah, there was some old-time radio kind of thing that was in the sample pack that I was playing around with, and it reminded me of the vocal sample style from Retrospect. I was like, oh, I can kind of keep some consistency between these songs if I sample this particular radio broadcast performance. I was like, okay, yeah. So I attached the idea of moving somewhere new, taking things with you, and big business being you're coming somewhere new to make it big, whether that's physically moving to a new place, or whether it's headspace, kind of moving somewhere new, or you're making yourself bigger and better. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a cool idea. Let's lock that sample in and make a song around it. Yeah.
These are all so beautiful, Bo.
Thank you.
I feel like I don't even know what to say. I'm like, everything you've said is just, what do I even add to that? I've got nothing worth saying.
I spend too much time thinking about all these little specifics and metaphors and ideas behind songs and stuff like that, so that the second I'm asked or prompted about it, I could just talk and talk and talk and talk.
You're ready to go.
Yeah.
I feel like my brain is always so empty.
So I had to chuck a Daft Punk song in there somewhere, just because they're the biggest influence on me. And the song that I chose of them, Something About Us, that everything that song is pretty much encompasses all the stuff I try and do. It's got guitar, cool beats, it's calm, it's sensitive, has almost a romantic kind of vibe behind it. And I was like, yeah, that's everything what I want to do. For some of the other tracks, Presets, one of their older songs, Girl and the Sea, that's very calm and nice, talking about more the kind of meaning behind that song kind of fits with the whole liminal space idea. It's all about the decision of, do you give up part of yourself for someone else, or is it you giving up something, or is it you actually moving forward and progressing as a person? And it's kind of like very grey, trying to think about and work out that idea. So I was like, perfect, that's that song. And there's a Avalanche's song, and when it comes to any sort of sampling vocals stuff, I pretty much get my inspiration from like the Avalanches with how they like to sample certain vocals. They like that aesthetic of a old-timey kind of like talk show kind of thing. It has this like certain punctuation, performance behind the words, which just feel fun to make beats around. So pop them in, and there's Panau and Empire the Sun, which they're pretty much the same group, just different versions of it, different people.
Really?
Yeah, so
I don't know
it's
how I
like
didn't
the
know that.
two guys from Empire and the Sun. I think both of them do Panau, but Panau they kind of have other people featured on to sing the stuff.
Oh, thanks for telling me that. I had no clue. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's like it blew my mind when I knew it, because Embrace, the Panau song, I heard it back when I was way, way younger as like a kid. And it was on some, no joke, it was on like some Hits for Kids
Oh, I love
album.
that.
And I just love that song. It wasn't until when I was older that I realised, oh, these are kind of like the same groups. And I kind of learnt about this, how they kind of structure their songs, what synth styles they use in certain parts to mean certain things, and yeah, so it's kind of cool. So I chucked in a song by each of them that I liked. Then there's a Ali Barter song, because I just love Ali Barter. She's a perfect example of like that. Her writing style of lyrics is very much like from the grunge way of, and like punk way of writing lyrics. Often it could be like a song about like critiquing or criticizing someone, but rather than saying you're bad or you're this, they sing the song from the perspective of that person they're criticizing, to kind of like humanize these not so good perspectives or ideas on people in a way that actually lets you pick them apart better, because it's like one of the song's girly bits is them talking about like, oh, hey there, good looking, yeah, show us your girly bits and stuff like that. And the way that she says it, it sounds so bad, but it's like, no, that's the reality. That's kind of how it is said. But she's singing in such a nice and sweet way. And I put one of her other songs, Backseat, as a request because it's just cool, it's fun, it's nice, easygoing, and her vocal stuff, I love her voice, and her songwriting is very kind of like grunge and hard rock influence, but it's like it's still very poppy at the same time. To me, it's like the perfect blend of those two worlds, and I love it. It's very alternative.
Thank you, Bowie, for joining me on the show today. Before we go, is there anywhere that the Triple Z listeners can find you online?
Yeah, I've got all my music on all major platforms. You can also find me on Instagram at BowieBand, BeauieBand. I try and post music-related stuff as well as just random updates or pretty pictures on there. And then there's my Facebook page. That's just Bowie, Beauie. Yeah, those are my main places. And always working on more stuff. And so if you like any of this or what I've been saying, come along, give us a like, and have a chat.